Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another live edition of NFLWP TV. We're your hosts, Steve Huber and Andrew Kerpis. We
Hello.
just want to take a minute to apologize for our long 3-week delay here. Sometimes people get busy. Anyway, we're going to kick this off with our weekly roundup. This will be the main part of our show. Going back to the week that was and talking about who did what. So looking back to week 1, we had Dave Finn come out on top with the weekly title with a 12-4 record and 18 points. The top 3 out of the APC were Eli, Chuck, and Craig. Out of the MPC, you had Dave, of course, Paul, and Steve T. Rounding out the bottom in the APC was Phil with his first last place finish of the year, Matt and Mike, and then in the MPC, you had Jason, Josh, and Brando. And then anything from you, Kerpis, on that week?
Well, Dave pulled out the weekly title, and he knows how to do that. It's his 15th of his career, ties him for second. I know for the longest time, Vince held the second place when it came to weekly titles all time. Dave caught him last year, then Vince finished the year out with 2 in a row, and he passed up Dave by 1. So Dave's right back tied with him, and from what I hear, he's coming after me now. So
Nice. All right, and then moving on 1 week forward into week 2, we came back there, and the rookie, Matt Babecki, took home the weekly title. A pretty good week there, 11-5, and an impressive 20 points. First guy to hit the doubles there in the 20s. Rounding out the top of the APC and MPC, you had Matt, Eli again making an appearance in the top 3, and Mike. And then in the MPC, you had Dave once again, Paul, and Steve T. And then rounding out the bottoms, you had Chuck, and unfortunately we saw Andrew in that bottom 3 in the APC. And then in the MPC, Brando, surprise, and Dan, his first of a little fall that he's on, and Brando's brother, Keith Larsalier, as well.
Well, Keith promises to get out of there, out of that spot. We heard from him
Quite
this
emphatically.
week. As far as Matt Babecki, he of the 58 20-point weeks in league history, he has the 13th by a rookie, so very impressive on his part. And, the first 2 weeks are arguably the most difficult to predict, so kudos to both Dave and Matt. It's always important to get that head start, and, you're generally playoff bound when you're doing that well early on.
We may have a little prediction there from Kerpis that we're playoff bound going. So now the week that we just finished, week 3, we had a photo finish at the end between the current defending champ and myself, Justin, and me. Justin edged me out with a really good 13-3 week, definitely a solid 18 points, and he took home the second weekly title for the APC, pushing their race to 9 there with the 2-1 lead. Like we said, Justin finished on top of the APC, and then in the MPC, Josh actually made a nice little push there, and then you had Jason and Dave, and then in the APC in the bottom, you had Matt J again, Chuck, and once again Phil in that bottom 3, and then in the MPC, Denny, Dan, and Keith.
Probably the first of many for Jeff, I can imagine, unfortunately for him. But yeah, Justin's a defending champion. He came out swinging. You did too, but unfortunately for you, fortunately for the APC, Justin was just a little bit better in week 3.
True. All right. Moving on to our next segment we have is the inaugural Heroes and Zeros. So looking back on the week 1, our hero, Dave Finn, the NFLWT's first ever hero pick, which was pretty huge, with the he had his big week there en route to the first weekly title of the season. And then the 0, we have Phil, who was the only member not to get double digits that week. Yeah. Posted a measly 9 points.
Yeah, underdog chasing, it's great for comedy, but it's not good for success in the league. It's best to stay the course. It's a long season. Don't try to get all the points all in 1 week. It's going to hurt you more than it's going to help you.
Yeah, some good advice for the sophomore there. Going into week 2, our hero, Matt Babecki, he had a hero pick once again. We had 2 in a row. But he also had that impressive 20-point week, putting himself all the way up to second place in his conference. And then that evened up the race to 9 at 1 apiece at the time. Looking at our 0, we have Brando, who did one up on Phil from the previous week, put up 8 points with a 5-11 record, and pretty much embarrassed the whole conference with that performance.
Yeah, the veteran, Brandon Larzalier, he's had trouble getting his engine revved up this year. I think he'll turn things around. For some reason, he and his brother have been affected early on this season, so hopefully they both can get things turned around and get back to where we know they're capable.
Yeah, I think the league's better when they're better. Week 3, our hero, we mentioned him earlier, Justin. He took home that weekly title with an incredible 13-3 week, beating myself by 1 stinking point. Not bitter at all about that. And then our 0, we have Denny, who comes in with his own low-scoring week. Only put up 10 points, 8-8. And if it wasn't for somehow getting that bonus point with LeGarrette Blount that I think was gifted to him, he himself would have been in single digits as well.
Yeah, that LeGarrette Blount point, sorry to interrupt, the LeGarrette Blount point was made possible by the D'Angelo Williams late injury. Under league rules, if you're probable or questionable, your player, if they're injured, suddenly you can change it out, and he got Blount. Who would think the backup running back would win a bonus? But I guess you know all about the backup running back winning bonuses, huh?
That's true. Just ask Vince Marchese, and he could probably tell you a couple stories as well.
That's true.
Going to our next segment, risers and fallers. So our risers in the APC, in the course of just 3 weeks, we saw Matt Babecki starting out in 8th place and actually jump all the way up to 2nd in his conference. Huge, huge jump. In the MPC, we saw similar Josh Morenza, who started out in 10th, definitely in the red, and himself jumped all the way up into 4th place and got a nice matchup there in the first round of the playoffs if things stay the way. Our biggest fallers, starting out in the APC, believe it or not, Mr. Ofer, Chuck Hutton, actually started in 2nd place, but only after 3 weeks he already finds himself back down into 8th. On the MPC side, Dan, our draft captain, started out there in 6th place, and he now is in 11th, dead last in the MPC.
Yeah, my question about Matt Babecki is, can he stay in that spot? We don't know anything about the rookie. His career is only 3 weeks long, so it'll be interesting to see if he can stay in that spot. As far as Josh, he's in 4th. I think that's probably where he'll stay this year, contrary to what Easy Smith thinks. He said he's going to finish last in the NPC. For Chuck, this has to be the year. It's his 7th year in the league. It has to be his year he makes the playoffs. So it was great week 1 for him, but he can't just keep falling like that. And then for Dan, he can't do this again. We don't want to see him in last place in the conference.
That's true. That's very true. All right, moving on. Then there's our risers and fallers. We're going to go to my favorite category, most people's favorite, the classic, over 10 years running, ballsy and bonehead picks of the week. So our ballsy pick of the week for week 1, got to give that one to Dave Finn. He had the only guy picking Atlanta over New Orleans. Nobody saw that one coming. We thought the Saints would come out and crush. Got himself a little hero pick on the way. And then our bonehead, we have a 3-way tie. So Josh Morenza, Mike Hocking, and Matt Babecki all picking Green Bay over Seattle in Seattle on the opening weekend. We all knew the Seahawks defending champs would be hyped. How could you possibly think Green Bay was going to even compete in that game?
Right.
You guys all just gave away a free point. Honestly, huge boneheads. Going into week 2, Morenza makes up for it with his own ballsy pick, though. As Kirpus mentioned, we all went to bed that night thinking San Fran had it locked up. Chicago comes through, gets the win in San Francisco, and Josh gets the underdog pick there. And then our bonehead for that week, we have a tie as well, Dan, and then Matt J. with Jacksonville over Washington. Pretty much if anybody picks Jacksonville at all year, you're automatically getting bonehead. So if you guys want to find yourself in the broadcast, go ahead and pick Jacksonville. We'll shout you out.
Easy way.
Just a guarantee. Coming into week 3, we just finished, and Babecki, if you notice a trend here, we said his name a lot. He's kind of that big swinger. He's chasing underdogs. Sometimes he gets bonehead, sometimes he gets ballsy. He came through ballsy because he was right. Him and Brando picked Arizona over San Francisco. Now, Arizona has a decent record, but I don't think anybody really thought Arizona was going to win that game with San Fran. And then our bonehead, Eli and Phil, both picked Tampa Bay over Atlanta. In Atlanta on Thursday on the short week, and Atlanta absolutely demoralized Tampa and won. I think the score is 112-3 or something like that, roughly. I don't remember. So when your team loses by that much, you're going to get bonehead.
Yeah.
Now going on a little further. So speaking of some boneheads, we got our social media smack talk section here. A lot of smack talk's been going on this young season already, and I think, Andrew, you can do a better job telling us about everything here and keep us up to date with the rivalries.
Yeah, it's unlike anything we've ever seen in the league before. Even during the live journal days where it was all in one spot, people they weren't really talking the way they are now, and it's been a revelation for the league. And something I'm really noticing this year is that Mike Hocking is giving it back to Jeff the way Jeff gave it to Mike in 2013. Mike's really been laying it on thick. Every chance he gets, he's coined the hashtag Captain Phil, basically saying that Jeff is going to finish last. And Jeff isn't doing much to prove him wrong right now. Staying on Phil, basically everyone is after him. Matt Babecki comes in as a rookie, takes the hashtag Fear the Phil movement. He's changed it to hashtag Fear the Nothing, which everyone seems to like. And even the normally quiet Jason Watson, you go on Facebook and you see that he's liked all the anti-Phil commentary. So Jeff's not getting much love around the league these days.
Yeah, and just to interrupt real quick, so a few names you just mentioned, Phil, Mike Hocking, and Matt Babecki. One thing these guys all have in common, they're all in the APC. What's with the APC hate fest?
Tough love is what Justin Bensett says, so I'll go with that. That's fine. That's fine with me.
That's true. All right. Any other good rivalries you have for us, or that pretty much sums up the big ones, I think?
Well, we got Vince versus Easy Smith, so that's a new one we found out this week.
That's true. We saw
how much Vince will be talking. It's fun when he does.
I think that might be Vince's one comment for, I think, the next 10 years as well, unfortunately.
You're probably right. What about the NPC? Anything in there?
NPC, I don't think so. We got a little type on going. Every once in a while I got to light a fire. I kind of put a little word out to Keith and his brother. We're trying to get those Lars Lears back on track, and I like the way Keith responded. So not so much trash talking rivalries, but I think we're all behind each other at least until week 15, 16 rolls around, and we're all vying for playoff spots, of course. I think things will change in the future.
Yeah.
Anyway, so going on, a new segment that we just came up with that I'm really interested in here is our contenders versus pretenders. Who is for real, who's the real deal, and who's just all smoke and mirrors. And I'll kick this off talking about the APC here. So we got a few guys here. Eli, who's quietly stayed in first place here. He's been top 3 every week. You got the rookie Matt Babecki, and then the just lightning rod here. I think he's the Chad Ochocinco of the NFLWPT is Phil. And 3 guys here. Are they pretenders? Are they contenders? And with Eli, hasn't said a word. He's been dead silent, but his picks speak for themselves, and he has the past success. I really think Eli's going to be a contender here. But Becky, the rookie, also, he talks the talk, definitely, but lately he's been walking the walk. And I got to say, I hate to admit it, but I like what I see out of the rookie. I think he's a contender as well. And then, like we said, our lightning rod here, Fear the Phil, Fear the Nothing. 3 really bad weeks in a row, some single digits in last place. He currently sits in that red zone. But you know what? I believe in the guy. And I got a feeling somewhere deep down, and I think the guy's a contender, and I think he's going to pull it out here. He's got 14 more weeks to make this right. One pick at a time, I think this guy's going to be a contender.
Quite the prediction. As for the NPC, I only have one of each here. So my contender, Paul Aliff. He's a former Rookie of the Year, former regular season title winner. He's had a lot of regular season success. Unfortunately, he's a 5-time loser when he gets to the Final Four of the playoffs. But I think this is the year.
Ouch.
Gets over the hump, gets to the big game, wins the big game. He's your champion of the league. Coming out of the NPC. My pretender, Dave Finn. He can rack up all those numbers, but he's just going to lose in the first round.
Oh, ouch. Ouch, that's serious. That's a serious call there. All right, Dave Finn, let's see how he responds. All right, there's our pretenders and contenders. So we're going to take a quick second and update everybody on that monthly race that we talked about before. We have one more week left, and on the final game of Monday night, September will be concluded. And we're going to have our first monthly champion of this year and our 40th monthly prize winner overall. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so our current race right now, we mentioned a lot of these names a lot. They're getting a lot of play time here. Eli currently in the lead with 49 points. He's got an impressive 33-15 record, which is, better than a 2-1 win to lose. His plus minus is currently way up there at 23. In a close second, we have Dave Finn, 7 points, only 2 behind. He also has the better record, so he's got this in his back pocket. 1 more win, 1 less loss. His plus minus 25, best in the league. So if we come down to a tiebreaker, Dave Finn's going to want to hold on to that. Matt Berbecki, the rookie, finds himself in contention for the first month. He's in third with 47 as well, but his record, few games less. You can tell he's been really living by those underdogs and those bonus picks and that hero pick he got. Only a 29-19 record, plus minus only 7. So really interesting discrepancy there. And then we just want to note, after those top 3 guys, myself with 46, Steve T with 45, Josh Morenza 44. So really coming in this last week, at least 6 or 7 guys have a shot at this monthly title still.
And I just want to point out that the record for most points in a single September is 64, set just last season by Keith Larzalier. I feel like that record is going to fall this week. It's definitely in danger.
I think we're going to see that too. It's only going to take a 15-point week by a weekly title winner here to get it.
Only 13 games, but I think it can be done.
I think so. Yeah, we are going in the bye week as well, so important to know that. Okay, so and then Kirpus, you're going to update us too on our milestones that have been reached in the first few weeks here, and then we got a nice little segment coming up as well.
Actually, what I have is just the 2 milestones that should be reached next week. Okay. I think they're big enough to just be celebrated. Craig Harrison and Jason Watson, both 2010 rookie class members. Craig is just 4 points away from 1,000 points. And Jason, after the Giants win last night, he's only 14 points away. So should be a big week for those 2.
Excellent. All right, and then here's a little interesting segue we're going to have here just before we wrap things up, is our Did You Know section.
Yeah, so we were just talking about the September monthly title, and a rookie has won the September monthly title in 03, 04, 06, 07, 09, and 2010. The only rookie class who didn't win the September monthly title is 08, and that was Mike Hocking and Chuck Hutton's rookie class. So I want to see, is Matt Berbecki going to follow in the footsteps of Mike Hocking and Chuck Hutton, or is he going to follow the rest of the league and their rookies in September?
That's a very interesting fact. I had no clue that many rookies really love the month of September.
That's pretty much every time there was a rookie in the league.
Yeah, that's pretty insane.
Yeah.
All right, so one last thing here before we wrap up. Our current playoff picture, of course. That's what everybody's interested in. So if the playoffs began today, here's what we would have. From the APC side, starting in the green, you have Eli currently sitting with that week 1 bye. Mm-hmm. And then in the yellow, the center there, would be our first round matchups here. In the 7th seed, currently Ricky versus the number 2, Matt Berbecki. You currently have Vincenzo at 6 versus JY, Justin Bensett, at the 3 seed. Craig at the number 5 would be lined up with Mike Hocking at the 4. And then in the red zone, you don't want to be, you have Chuck, Andrew, Matt, Jay, and Mr. Fear the Phil. Now, an interesting note, all these guys in the red are only 3 points currently out of playoff contention. So don't put too much stock into where you're all sitting right now. It's only week 3.
It's early.
On the NPC side, sitting in the green right now, week 1 bye, Mr. Dave Finn, who Andrew affectionately referred to as a pretender. Mm-hmm. Sitting in the yellow, that 2 versus 7 would be myself versus Chris Fox. The 3 versus 6, Steve T versus Jason Watson at this current time. And the 4 versus 5, Josh Morenza versus Paul Aliff, who Kirpus thinks is going the distance. Currently in the red in the MPC, the red zone, we have Denny, both Lars Aliers, Keith and Brandon, and then Dan sitting in last place. And just as we said with the APC and the NPC, these guys are all only 4 points out of playoff contention. So in any one week, we could totally flip the script on these colors here.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Now, as far as the NPC matchups go, those would all be in every way possible a first-time matchup. I know Chris Fox has always said he wants to take on the best, so he'd be lined up with you. That'd be a good way to start if he wants to take on one of the best. I know Jason Watson and Steve Terrell have a long-time rivalry dating back to a different fantasy football league in which Jason beat Steve in a championship by less than a point. So I know in every possible way Steve wants to take down Jason, and then Paul and Josh would be a solid matchup. Over in the APC, every year in the playoffs there's always one kind of you want to go to sleep. It's kind of boring matchup. I think that'd be Rick and Matt Bebeki. Sorry, guys, not too excited about that one. Vince would take on Justin. Justin actually beat Vince in a 2011 consolation bracket before we did away with the consolation bracket, so maybe Vince wants some revenge, I'm not sure. And then in the 2012 Bud Light Bowl, Mike Hocking actually defeated Craig 3-1, so maybe some revenge to be exacted there if those were to happen.
Excellent. A little extra added on to our Did You Know section.
Yeah.
All right, so we got all those in place. That's our playoff picture, and our last thing here, kind of make some predictions to wrap things up. So looking into week 4, who's going to win, who's going to make a jump, who's going to make a fall. I'll kind of start here. My prediction, I think we're going to even this thing up. I think the race to 9 is going to be 2-2. I'm going to call for my other namesake, the Steve from upstairs, number 1. I'm going with Steve T to bring home a weekly title and currently even this race up 2 apiece. I think he's going to make a nice big jump. I'm thinking Dave Finn, this is where he slips up a little bit. He's going to drop below, and the 2 Steves are going to be in charge of the NPC for a week or 2 here. And then go ahead, Andrew. Who do you think is going to be taking home the weekly crown?
Well, I agree with you about the race to 9. It's not going to be a runaway like it has been the last 2 years. I think Chris Fox wins the week 4 title. I think Eli, my cousin, claims the monthly title. And I think Chuck's going to make it back into playoff contention, if only for 1 week.
If only for 1 week. I support that. And I didn't mention a monthly title winner as well. I forgot to say that. Looking back over my notes here, we're currently sitting at Eli, Dave, and Bebeki. So I think Dave's going to drop down. I think the pressure is going to be too much for the rookie, and he's going to break that streak. And I also am going to go with Eli. I think he's going to take home this first month, and he's going to be enjoying a little payday mid-season.
Yeah, safe bet. Safe bet.
All righty. So that's all we have for the first segment here of our NFLWP TV. Thanks for joining us. Again, sorry for the delay. We're going to try to keep this more of a weekly thing in the future. If anyone has any suggestions, any mailbag questions, any comments, concerns, any segment ideas, feel free to send those in to league headquarters. And all suggestions will be taken seriously, except the awful ones, of course. And that's all we have for today. So thanks for joining us. Keep in touch in the future. Look for those updates. I'm Steve Huber alongside Andrew Kerpis. Enjoy your orange.